Hello out there. My name is Laolu Akonde and you are on to Inside Sources. And here is my take for today entitled Our Quest for Democracy and President Tinubu. Yesterday was June 12 and we celebrated that epoch-making election. On June 12, 1993, we had the strongest clarification yet that Nigerians not only desire democracy, but under reasonable conditions, we can fight for it, regardless of what the powers that be may try to do, including hidden agendas. We have since 1999 been under civilian rule, and the celebration of democracy on June 12 is at least a strong opportunity to reaffirm the lofty aspirations of Nigeria and Nigerians as a people for a truly democratic evolution. Besides heroes who have passed on regarding the June 12 saga, such as Chief M.K.O. Abiola, General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, Pa Ofere-Rewane, and several others, the current president has emerged over the decades as a consequential and strident voice for constitutional democracy in Nigeria. Now, President Tinubu burnished that his record yesterday when he announced an array of national recognitions for a good number of Nigerians living and dead who have stood stoutly for democratic principles and ideals, especially regarding June 12. We commend him for reminding us that such a pantheon of honors is part of a national healing that must take place in our ongoing quest for Nigeria's glorious destiny in the aftermath of June 12 annulment of 1993. What is now left for President Tinubu to do is to finish the job, while he still has 2 more years before going back to the electorate. He said it himself again yesterday, and I quote, "Some of the best advice a politician gets comes from his most ferocious opponents," unquote. Mr. President, please ensure that under your watch, any form of authoritarianism or any kind of deprivation of the democratic dividend is discouraged, averted, and renounced. Your denunciation yesterday of one-party ascendancy in Nigeria is welcome. But now, you must hold yourself vigilant against the whispers and often loud noises of sycophancy, which is capable of not only rubbishing your own democratic credentials if left unchecked, but also can malnourish the minds and the sensibilities of Nigerian people in our quest for sustainable democracy. Let's just be forthright about it. While a politician does need the buzz and the buoy of acceptability, which sycophants take advantage of, allowing your own ministers to name institutions and projects after you over and over again, while yet you are still in office, is inelegant, and it confuses good optics for lasting acknowledgements. We can see that both yourself, Mr. President, and Minister Wike, you are enjoying your well-deserved romance, but caution be not thrown to the winds on the altar of sycophancy. It is the same with what may end up an extreme adoration in a song dedicated to you by the Senate President, who sang in Lagos that things are getting better, for Asiwaju is on that road. Mr. President, you are our president, and you have earned your democratic accolades. But only kings sit on the throne. There's a difference between king and a president. We have a president in Nigeria, not a king. In any case, when you were in Lagos, you managed those things very well. No one has yet recalled your administration as governor, renaming anything after your name. So why can't people wait? Please, don't be fooled by these antics. You have better things to worry about, such as giving us a new people's constitution, such as fighting poverty, which has worsened because of some of the tough decisions that you have to take, which many of us support, such as tackling indiscipline and corruption, like you yourself recently reminded us at the APC National Summit only weeks ago, and other developmental priorities such as revitalizing human capital development by encouraging the states to transform public education and the healthcare system across the nation. And finally, let us all pay attention to that opening prayer that was said yesterday at the June 12 address at the National Assembly by Honorable Yusuf Adamu Gagi, the federal lawmaker from Plateau State who is also an APC member. He led the Muslim prayers. Unlike others who twist church songs of godly praise to lines of human flattery, this truly progressive lawmaker, Gaddi, asked the president in his prayer that he should seek the truth over praises. And he prayed that God will enable President Tinubu to have advisors who will tell him the truth, and that God will protect him from, and I quote now, the whispers of sycophants and the traps of injustice. Finally, and indeed, Mr. President, we pray and join Honorable Gaddi that God will surround you with honest advisors such as the ones you had while you were governor in Lagos State between 1999 and 2007. That type of kitchen cabinet is one missing piece of your presidency so far. For sure, there are illustrious ministers in your cabinet, but you need more, and you need that Lagos type of kitchen cabinet members who can disagree with you and yet respect you, and you respect them and trust them. Because it will take someone like you, based on your democratic antecedents and credentials, who is best prepared to help Nigeria attain true democracy. And that is why, Mr. President, your declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State, shutting down the governor and the state assembly, is a political overreach, to use your own language yesterday. That is not democratic, and you can still redeem yourself by rescinding that decision in good time. And so, we pray that you will not fail, and that Nigeria will truly and certainly, irreversibly enjoy the sustainable dividend of democracy starting in your own time and going forward. And there you have it. Inside Sources will be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today we are having a full-fledged round panel discussion on the 2-year anniversary of the Tinubu administration. And of course, if we have time, also talk about many of the permutations of 2027 that you must have heard about. To join me in that important conversation or conversations, I have two Nigerian leading public intellectuals and journalists. To my far right, I have Mr. Dayo Akintobi, a notable community publisher and journalist in the country. Mr. Akintobi, welcome to the studio.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And of course, to my immediate right, we have Etim Hetim, a retired banker, journalist, and author. Etim, welcome back to Inside Sources.
Nice to be here.
All right, so let's just start from this 2 years anniversary of the administration. And I want to start with a disclosure and say that, look, I want to say this at the head of our discussion, that I still believe that this man has enough time. And I'm saying that because of what we're going to get into. Now, a lot of things have been said and a lot of things are going on around this 2-year anniversary. I want to start with what seems to be a buzz in Abuja, this idea of renaming things after the president. Quite a few of our people who have done a bit of research and said that, look, this kind of stuff wasn't happening when he was governor of Lagos State. You know, he was governor of Lagos State for 8 years. You didn't have this, renaming virtually everything in sight after Tinubu. Why is it happening now? Let's start with Mr. Akintobi.
Well, it's quite interesting, actually, because historically, it usually is after a leader has died or passed on or retired and has left mega footprints in the lives of the people. It's usually sort of a report card and a reward for performance. Right. It's rare to see it happening during the tenure of a leader, at which point the jury is still out on whether he has done well or not. We cannot be rewarding you or immortalizing you while you are still in the process of trying to prove yourself. This is just halfway through the first tenure. We don't know what the scorecard is going to be at the end of the 4 years. It is improper and inappropriate at this juncture in his tenure to already be seeking to immortalize himself. And yes, granted, It's the subnationals who are doing it, even in the FCT, where they renamed the International Conference Center. It's the FC minister that did it ostensibly. But the president has the wherewithal to say, no, I don't think it is appropriate. He should have refused all these kind of laurels at this point in time to let us know he's grounded, he's focused, he's humble. Because the way I see it is that these people are all just trying to curry his favor by trying to celebrate him ahead of when he should be celebrated. But I think he should be grounded enough to say, no, this is inappropriate, let's not do it. So for him to be actually allowing it to happen, he even actually went to the commissioning of, I think, the barracks that were named after him. He attended the event, saw his name sprawled in sprawling letters. So I think he must get a perverse type of pleasure out of that kind of public acclaim.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Etim, what's your take?
I think people are very disappointed in the president in this. The International Conference Center is not the only monument. In the last few months, I think 8 places have been named after him. There is a polytechnic in Kwarimpa. There's barracks in Asokoro. There is an immigration center. There is the Mina Airport. Mina Airport had existed since the 80s, but he just came in 1 year after he named it after himself. I think there is serious psychological problem, either or maybe with the people surrounding the president. It is ill-advised, it is misguided, and it is utterly distasteful. International Conference Center was built by IBB in 1991 in just 6 months to host OAU Summit, 27 OAU Summit.
Okay.
It was scheduled to be held in Addis Ababa, which is the headquarters of OAU. But because of security problems that quickly erupted,
Right.
they contacted IBB and said, can you help
Host
the conference? And there was no facility. Abuja was just being built.
Yeah.
So the man got into action, and he said in 6 months, he's written about it in his book, in 6 months, the place was ready. IBB did not name it after himself. Abacha Kem did not name it after himself. Abdul Salami Kem, Obasanjo Kem, Yaradua Kem, Jonathan Kem, even Buhari. Buhari we love to kick. If Buhari, to be fair to him, Buhari said that he does not even want anything to be named after him while he was in office. And now we have this. Yes, the president has renovated the place. He should have said no to Wike, that this should not be done. I think this should be reversed immediately. It has tarnished the reputation of this president.
I don't think this is the first time
No,
that
it's
you're
not.
having all this renaming after a certain president. It's not in good taste, I believe so. And to the extent that you had him in Lagos for 8 years, and you didn't see this kind of what Jimmy Disu has actually described as megalomania, that must speak to him, like you said, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, you seem to enjoy it somehow. But also, it speaks to the fact of the kind of people that are surrounded the president.
Correct. That is a very important point.
Yeah, because if he didn't do it, my director was just telling me before we started that, look, he was there in Lagos State, 1999 to 2007, that we didn't have this kind of this charade. So it also speaks to the kind of people around him, people who are flattering him, for their own personal benefit. And this is where it breaks the heart of people, who
know him very well.
Yeah, who think
because
that
he was never like this. We were all in Lagos when he was governor. It never happened. In fact, the major thing he named, I remember, was renaming Western Avenue after Funshaw Williams, the PDP politician that was murdered.
Right.
And to immortalize him, he named such a big monument after his opponent. Political opponent.
Right.
That was magnanimity.
And noble.
And noble.
Yeah.
But for him to come down and be surrounded by people like Nyesom Wike, I'm utterly dismayed.
It is interesting. The relationship between, the president and Nyesom Wike. Mr. Kitobi, I want you to kind of help us to describe it. You can see some kind of, it's like a romance, when they were,
Elon Musk and Trump romance.
Is that what is happening, Mr.
I think they're both using each other, to tell you the truth. I think they both have divergent interests, but somewhere in the middle, they can help each other. They can leapfrog over some of the things they need to achieve. I think the president already recognizes the fact that he can use Nyesom Wike to destabilize the PDP. I don't think it's so much about what he's, because some people believe that it's because he's a no-nonsense person, he can get things done in the FCT, and because he's a disciplinarian, he don't take rubbish, he can talk to anybody, so he can step on powerful toes in the FCT. So some people assume that was why he was chosen. But the scuttlebutt, the inside understanding is that his role really, as far as the president is concerned, is to destabilize the PDP. And he seems to be doing very well at it, because the PDP is in complete disarray at this moment.
He's succeeding.
So he is succeeding in that wise. And then the flip side of the relationship is that what is it he is looking for from the presidency? And of course, there's power. He's a megalomaniac himself.
Protection.
Yes. And he also, let's not forget, had presidential ambition. Let's remember that in the primaries in 2023, he had wanted to actually throw his hat in the ring.
He did.
First of all, he actually did.
He did.
And then at one point, he was angling for the vice presidency when Atiku got the ticket.
Yes.
And that was what actually caused this whole G5 split, was the fact that it's actually funny to me, because when he was being considered for the vice presidency, he didn't think at that point in time there was anything wrong with another presidential candidate. But the moment Okowa was picked and not him, that was when his ire immediately came apparent that, we had an agreement that we wouldn't put a northern candidate forward, and we're not having any part of this. So I think he probably still has some presidential ambition, and the exposure he's getting from this administration, the fact that he's even an opposition party member and has been picked to work in the current administration, that in and of itself is unprecedented and is record-setting. So I think he's raising his national profile, which is indicative of a quest for something bigger and higher down the road. So it's an incestuous relationship of sorts.
Incestuous.
Oh my. Okay, I mean, there are quite a lot of juicy directions that we can take into, maybe if we have time, but I want us to now talk about, what are your assessments about the performance of the president in the last 2 years? Eti.
It's mixed. I mean, the reviews are mixed, in my opinion. He's done a few things right. There couldn't have been alternative to removal of subsidy. There's been savings. Savings have trickled down to the states and local government areas. He's also done a lot in terms of infrastructure in Abuja here. He's also initiated very good things, student loan schemes, and what was the other one? The organization that gives credit to people who want to acquire personal property.
Yeah.
Those are very, very transformational initiatives.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, my number one problem with him is that the quality of governance has degenerated. Quality. People are complaining of authoritarian tendencies. People are complaining of lack of rule of law. People are complaining of lack of transparency in some of the transactions we've seen. I mean, the mega projects, we don't know how many people competed for the renovation of the International Conference Center in any case, and now we are told the bill is 39 billion naira. It was constructed at less than 300 million naira.
Well, in 1991.
In 1991, but even if you discount the inflation and all the devaluations, you cannot account for 39 billion naira. And the fact that the minister in charge is driving a Rolls Royce and has a private jet all brings the whole thing to a very confusing aura.
Although I'm sure that Wike must have gotten his jet before now. But
of course, he must have gotten his jet before now, and we are wondering how a public officer, somebody who has never done any single business in his life, started his career as a local government chairman, has never done a single business, has no registered companies in them, will have a Rolls Royce and a private jet.
Very important point.
He has to explain it to his conscience.
Interesting point. Etim, what's your take?
Even Aliko Dangote, with all his wealth, does not drive private Rolls Royce.
Yeah, Aliko even said that there was a time that his staff were building houses in London, and he was wondering what did they need it for. Mr. Akitobi, what's your take? How do you rate the president in the first 2 years?
For me, the pivotal thing about his administration begins with May 29, 2023, when he made those two declarations right there at his inaugural speech. I think those two policy initiatives that he introduced that day will be the hallmark of his entire first term. He will sink or swim on the ultimate effect of those two policies. And at this point in time, in Nigeria of today, Mr. Etim alluded to the fact that fuel subsidy needed to be done. And while that may be true, I don't think the way it was done was salutary for the Nigerian public. First of all, I don't think it should have been precipitous. I think the announcement right there during the inauguration created a lot of chaos and instability that we are still reeling from today, 2 years after. So I think those two policies, the twin policies of fuel subsidy and removal of the parallel market for the exchange rate, I think those two have continued to have knock-on effects to today that the mass of Nigerians are still negatively impacted. So what therein would have been the appropriate way to go about it if we're talking about, okay, it was needed, but perhaps it wasn't done properly. So maybe it shouldn't have been as spontaneous or as precipitous. Maybe it should have been phased in. Maybe some cushioning measures. Maybe we should have been proactive rather than reactive instead of trying to do CNG buses, which, by the way, we've not heard anything of about in recent times. But it was the mantra immediately after that was that don't worry, we'll cushion the effect of public transportation. We're bringing in trains, CNB buses. We haven't heard anything about that. Bottom line is, for the average Nigerian worker or the average Nigerian youth or the average Nigerian vulnerable person, transportation is expensive, electricity is expensive, food is expensive, rent is expensive, income is stagnant, insecurity is up. So all the indices that give to a good quality of life are lower 2 years after than on May 29, 2023.
Wow.
So that is the assessment. How you now grade it on a rolling scale of A to F.
It's left for the viewer.
Oh, my God. Now, so I mean, thank you both of you for those opening comments. And this is why I've tried to take a very good look at what is happening. And with the benefit of hindsight of the fact that, I served in the last presidency, one of the things that I figured out very quickly is that the president can want to do a lot of things. But if you don't have enforcers who will go out on a diligent basis, the president might wish to do several stuff. And running a big country like Nigeria is not huge. A cheap party. It's huge. But you can say, this is what I want to do, really. But if you don't have people who can get it done, people that you trust, people who have the skill, the capacity, the experience, the knowledge, and the public spirit to get it done. And that is one of the challenges that I see that is happening under the Bola Ahmed Tinubu presidency. First of all, there is quite a bit of chaos, even in the villa. There's quite a bit of chaos. The president appointed the chief of staff, and then very soon, clearly, everybody saw that the chief of staff was not indeed the chief of staff. Aides of the president will say jokingly behind his back that the chief of the staff has been removed. I mean, so we now have HMO doing part of the work of the chief of staff. A lot of disorganization. Look at what happened even in the communication space.
With a jury.
At first, it was a jury who didn't know, he had no idea, of what the job entails. He left, and then it took a while, even before Bayo Onanuga could be given the authority to do the job, to lead the team. And then they brought in Sunday. Nobody hears about Sunday, you know. And then you have Boala there, you know, somebody who brought a lot of baggage of how much, you know, stringently he has gone after the character
of the president.
The president now becomes your spokesperson. Now, to be fair to Boala thinks on his feet. You have to give him that. But somebody speaking for you has to carry that kind of baggage. It's going to slow down the work. But this is the most important observation. Then, you know, I'll let you guys to comment. When Bola Ahmed Tinubu was governor in Lagos State, I have spoken to at least two of the people whose name I'm going to mention, who were his commissioners. And they said to me that, look, what they used to do was that every week they will go to Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu's office and they will try and sort things out. And that there were several times when the president will lambast them and say, who the hell do you guys think you are? I am the one that was voted for. And they will say, well, Mr. Governor, but you can't do this. There will be several times that he will walk out on them. And then they will stay. He will have them to leave. They won't leave. He will walk out on them. He will come back hours after. They are still there doing the work. And he allowed them because he knew that they
meant well for him.
Yeah, he trusted them. You know, so a lot of the things that we saw in Lagos, this was the behind-the-scenes story of how it was done. And the people who were doing this work, Oshibajo, Yemi Oshibajo, Edun, Cardoso, Dele Alake, Fashola, and Raul Aregbesola. These were the people who were ensuring that the man stood, you know, I mean, kept to the promise and became that celebrated governor from the Southwest, who then saw that, yes, I can actually be president. My point, gentlemen, is that where is that team today in this government? It seems that the president is playing World Cup with his third 11. What do you guys think?
Fourth 11.
Eti.
I think you've made a very good point, and it takes an insider like you to give us this kind of insights. You mentioned 5 people that worked closely with him to achieve so much in Lagos. Out of the 5, only 3 are around.
Yeah. And even someone like Alaki has been
pushed into where I don't know.
Obscurity.
But I think what has really happened to this presidency is when he got elected, he had his eyes on re-election immediately. And so this team he assembled were given 2 roles: govern and be ready for re-election. So he has a large number of politicians, real politicians in the real sense of the word, who can win election by hook or crook, but who can do nothing else. They have nothing to deliver apart from politicking, scheming, and planning to kill opponents and opposition parties. So the president is not as focused on the job as he was in Lagos. In Lagos, he thought of nothing else. There was nothing else that mattered to him. He probably thought that being a good governor will prepare him for a higher office.
Yeah.
Now, there's no more higher office for him, so perhaps this is a resting place.
But there's legacy and there's God.
But it's legacy
that you must think about.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Akitobi.
Yes, I think that the difference between the two, and what you're talking about, is the true definition of a kitchen cabinet. The people who, perhaps informally or unofficially, they are your sounding board.
Yeah.
They are the people you trust implicitly in terms of their judgment, their acumen, and they're not afraid to tell you the truth. I think part of the problem of leadership is that there's so much psychophancy. Everybody is a yes man.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to curry favor. Everybody wants to make you feel like you know it all, you are right all the time. Very few people have the courage to tell the leader the truth. And that is the beginning of the problem, is that you begin to believe in your own invincibility. This is part of the issue. I think the difference between Lagos and Abuja for Governor/President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was that in Lagos it was personal. He was committed and really dedicated to changing Lagos, to improving the lot of Lagos, whether it's because he was from there, he grew up there. He seemed to have a vested interest in Lagos.
And he sacrificed so much.
Absolutely, he did.
Lagos.
He did sacrifice quite a bit.
For democracy.
Yes. I don't see that same degree of passion in his national assignment. It seems to me as if it was the whole Emilio Kant philosophy that I want to get there for the sake of being there. I want to be able to say I too was president. But I don't see the degree of passion in him to actually make a difference and write his name in the sands of time in Project Nigeria the way he was in Lagos. And so that's why you see those lapses that were not apparent in Lagos, why he's willing to look the other way to people who are simply there to do his bidding as opposed to actually making them a sounding board for his policies to make sure they keep him on the straight and narrow. He doesn't seem to care. This issue we talked about earlier in terms of monuments being named after him during a tenure that has not been scored yet. If he had those five that you are talking about then, not necessarily the same five people, but such a group of five, they would have called him to order, made him realize that, sir, this is out of order. And he would have taken that advice.
Because there is mutual trust. But let's move on because of our time to 2027. You know, and I want to open it up by the overplay of our elite politics. Now, as a student of politics, there are three levels of political engagement. There is grassroots politics, you know, which is supposed to be the dominant politics in a democracy. It should be about the people. But there's also elite politics, where the elites they are gaining each other, you know, for the concentration of power. And then in Nigeria, there is the ethnic politics, which is, what part of the country are you from, you know, mixed with the religious politics. It seems to me that what we have seen in this country, especially since independence, but let's even focus more on from 1999 up until now, is the dominance of elite politics and ethnic politics.
That's the only thing.
Which explains what you have, that somebody will be on the opposing side today, and tomorrow, you know, there will be an effective concord with no apologies of any kind, you know, and it's just as if life is continuing. My question to you, gentlemen, is that if that is all that is happening, is there any hope that we have an effective coalition or an opposition that can change the game of how Nigerian politics is played? I don't know who wants to go first.
Is there any hope? I mean, let's all learn to be hopeful, but the hope is very little, very little. You've analyzed it very well. Elite politics is dominated by the elite.
Yeah.
And that is because those are the people who determine the candidates. They determine where the elections will go and the outcomes of the elections. It is never the people who queue up to vote that determines the outcomes of our elections, no matter how it appears. Now, that is why also the leaders do not pay so much attention to what the people are saying. Have you seen any public policy that is reversed or truncated because of the outcry of the people? Very little or no. Because leaders don't, because they believe that at the end of the day, these are not the people that will give me the re-election. So now we are hearing of coalition coming up for 2027, and they're having problems of their own. They are fighting over who will be the presidential candidates when they have not yet built the coalition, the platform. So you see that it's all about power. I want to rule, power grab, not the ideas. It's frightening what awaits us in this country. I can only be hopeful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Dyer.
I see down the road that our politics is still relatively immature. when you talk about the divisions
Yeah.
politically, and you've classified them very correctly, we will eventually evolve to a place where we coalesce around ideology. It's easy to jump ship now because we're not loyal to any particular school of thought. So only thing that binds us together is our fortunes. What's our political fortune?
Yeah.
As long as we see that the grass is greener on the other side.
What can I get?
Yes. So that's the only unifying factor, is the fact that our fortunes align. So it makes it easy to jump ship, and there's no penalty. You are not viewed to be a turncoat. In the United States, for example, if you are a conservative, it's almost impossible for you to overnight become a liberal, because if you are a conservative, it means you are a Bible thumper. It means you are anti-abortion. It means you are for prayer in school.
Yeah.
It means you are anti-welfare.
Yeah.
You are anti-big government.
Yeah.
It will take a radical...
Pro-tax write-off.
Absolutely. It will take a radical... In fact, they would almost have to give you a frontal lobotomy for you to be able to do such a massive U-turn and begin to see things from the opposite side of the fence. So this notion of being unified by our fortunes is very superficial. It's not a truthful and abiding or sustainable alliance or state of being, state of existence that will hold you there. So if fortunes change, in Nigerian democracy of today, the only usefulness of a political party is to give you a vehicle with which to get into office.
Yeah.
After that, it's
After
dead.
that, it's done.
You can do whatever you like.
Yes.
Even before that, if you already see that it can't actualize your ambition, you are already scheming to move to where it can happen. So, yes, we'll keep hope alive. What are the ways within which... I think time is important. I don't think American democracy got to where it is in 100 years. It had to evolve over time.
Yeah.
But also, I think our own unique configuration as a people, you've described some of it. There's ethnicity that still plays a major role. There's religion, there's financial status, there's so many things. But when you look at the current opposition that is trying to come together, they've already got it wrong right from the foundation building level, because word is that Atiku is going to be the flag bearer.
I was thinking that too.
Oh, you are coming there. Okay, so
Go ahead.
that already is already sounding the death knell. It's sounding the death knell for that coalition already, because there are some of us in Nigeria who still stand on this principle of rotational presidency. And the majority of Nigeria still believes in that. So how would you have had an 8-year presidency of Buhari, who came from the north, and at any time have thought you could follow it up with a northern presidency? That already killed the PDP in the last elections.
Yeah.
And I promise you it will kill any coalition that's putting forward a northern candidate in 2027.
Okay, so-
and Atiku is going in for that already. So that coalition, as far as I'm concerned,
It's
is
done I mean, thank you for going there, because that was the next thing. So let me just take it forward that, okay, let's imagine. You know, in recent weeks, the news filtered out that, Atiku is going to be president, and there is a deal between him and Peter Obi to be vice president. Peter Obi quickly rushed to the president and said, no, there's no such thing. Because, of course, that it would be political suicide for Peter Obi after his performance in 2023 to go and be anybody's vice president. First of all, he loses his team completely if he hasn't lost it already. So I think that was smart of him to say, hey, no.
We are
Now,
not this.
but my question to you, Etim, is that what are the chances that Atiku can stand up and say, you know what, we need to deal with, but we need to get Bola Ahmed Tinubu out of the way, even if I have to sacrifice my political ambition and throw my weight behind a southerner? Because people are saying that Jonathan is from the south, President Goodluck Jonathan. The man has been sounding as one of the more statesmen out of all our presidents. Look, I will say this, that when they were launching the book of Babangida, and it was all banters and everything in the place, nobody said anything about Abiola or the people or the victims. Jonathan stood up and made a very reasonable speech that spoke about the fact that the people are important. Jonathan was the only one. Now, I say that to his credit. And to say that, is Jonathan presidency possible? Can the coalition people come around behind Jonathan? Do you imagine how Atiku might say that, you know what, let me back that? What's your take?
I think there is a chance, I don't know how big a chance that is. A lot of people, including PDP members and leaders, are talking to Atiku, I understand. And it's increasingly clear to him that the idea of his running or his presidency is becoming very bleak, unpopular. So I don't know eventually whether Atiku will agree to this, but a lot of people are talking to him, even within the PDP. But Atiku has one major problem, and that is he has told himself that he wants to be president and he's entitled to it. And I understand that even prophets have prophesied that indeed he wants to be president. So Atiku will need a lot of talking to. So he will need a lot of unlearning the fact that you must be president before you can be a statesman. No, Atiku can be a statesman. Atiku can be a leader. Atiku can be a transformative leader at this level. He can leave the presidency for a while, back a very popular candidate, whether Jonathan or Obi, to challenge President Tinubu in 2027. I think Atiku needs a lot of unlearning.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dayo Akintobi and Mr. Etimeti, both of you notable journalists and public intellectuals, for your views, and thank you for coming to Inside Sources.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There you have it. Inside Sources will be right back with just one more segment for this edition. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, I want to have a very quick segment on some of the developments that have been going on by researchers and scholars in Africa and around the world who are concerned about how Africans can begin to build entrepreneurship and businesses around indigenous African knowledge. That is to say that, how are we supposed to build industry based on Africa's indigenous knowledge? Now, leading that discussion and that pack, that network around the world is Dr. Samuel Oloruntoba, a Nigerian scholar who is a professor at the Carleton University in Canada. He hosted a conference that had scholars from all across Africa and the world on trying to bring about the use of indigenous knowledge in African entrepreneurship. So I'm going to have a discussion with him and another participant at this conference that held last month in Entebbe, Uganda. So first, let me welcome Dr. Oloruntoba back to Inside Sources. Dr. Oloruntoba, it's good to see you again.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right.
Good morning.
Yeah. Let's also welcome a participant at that major international conference around how to restore Africa's indigenous knowledge in business and entrepreneurship, Skara Tumwembeze, who is a member of the African Indigenous Knowledge Research Network. Skara, you are welcome to Inside Sources.
Good evening from Uganda.
Thank you. Right, let's start from Prof. Prof, you are a professor of political science, and you have taken your research to the idea of how we ought to be as a continent, be using the knowledge that is indigenous to us Africans to do business, to build entrepreneurship. And in this conference that you hosted in Entebbe, I noticed that you had the support of major organizations such as MasterCard Foundation. Can you just tell us in a jiffy what this conference is all about and the kind of benefits that, that we accrue, not only to Nigeria, but to Africans and people across the world? Prof.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laolu Akonde. the conference was one of the activities of the Africa Indigenous Knowledge Research Network, which I founded in 2023 here in Canada, and we are working with about 16 universities in Africa. So the conference aimed at bringing together scholars. It brought together scholars on indigenous knowledge and restorative development. Restorative is intentional because we may have development that is extractive, but with application of indigenous knowledge, African indigenous knowledge on agriculture, on climate change, on food system, on medicine, this knowledge can help us to achieve restorative development, development that will be inclusive, development that is not extractive, development that is based on the knowledge of Africans themselves.
Mm. Yeah, and it's very important to us in Inside Sources because here we are concerned about the future of Nigeria. And good thing you have a Nigerian that is leading this important knowledge-driven effort, to our industry. The potentials are quite huge. Can you give us a short report of that conference and how you think it might benefit us in Nigeria and other African countries?
Thank you very much. The conference was very important because of its scope and the quality of presentation. In terms of representation, we had vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellor from Nigeria, from Uganda, from Kenya, from Tanzania, from like 16 countries in Africa. And the wide scope of what was presented at the conference covered all the issues I mentioned earlier on agriculture, on climate change, on governance and gender and all of that. In terms of how it will benefit us, this network is aimed at identifying opportunities in Africa indigenous knowledge and how that can lead to the creation of jobs. Because for 40, 60 years of our independence as for Nigeria and for many African countries, we've been trying to address the issue of poverty and unemployment, but it has not worked because some of those policies, they are not located within the indigenous knowledge system of Africa. So we always want to follow the idea from the World Bank, from the IMF, which is they are not based on our own knowledge system. And that's why sometimes we have growth without development. We have growth and yet the GDP is growing, but unemployment is there. Poverty is there, inequality is there. So with the application of Africa indigenous knowledge, not just in the urban centers, not just for the elite, but for the community members in rural areas, we can see how we can bridge this gap in poverty and inequality. We can see how we can use that to create jobs in agriculture, like I said, through handicraft, through dance, through storytelling, through creative industries, and many more.
Yeah, I mean, Prof, this is why, I've seen that this is a very fascinating idea to understand that we have depended for too long in Nigeria and, of course, in the entire African continent, especially south of the Sahara, so much on the Bretton Woods institution. I was listening to a scholar, on Instagram the other day, who said that a lot of these institutions, World Bank, IMF, even United Nations, they were founded by colonial masters. And there are claims that some of these organizations, World Bank and IMF, did not set out to understand or be an instrument for the real development of African people, which in part seems to explain what you have said, that we have, GDP growth that does not go down to the to solve the problem of poverty. Look at the problem of poverty in Nigeria, for instance, is huge. Getting to about 70%, according to World Bank themselves. So I wanted to ask you that.
Yeah.
Before we take it to Skara, I wanted to ask you that. So what will it take to take the research that your network and people like you in Africa are doing? What will it take to bring it down home to the peoples and the government, and how, in your own view, can this bring a true transformation of the situation and circumstances of our people, especially in the rural areas where you have most of the poverty in Nigeria and in the continent?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very important question. And that is what the approach we have taken under the African Indigenous Knowledge Research Network is co-creation. I say in Yoruba, in Bayon, without without him being present there.
Yeah.
I mean, I will have said it in my own local language.
Yeah.
So you don't barb somebody's hair in his absence. So we are intentional in engaging with those communities. We call them knowledge holders,
Right.
community elders, and the youth themselves, that they are the biggest demographic in Africa. So we engage with them to say, what do you need? How can the knowledge system that existed before the colonial intrusion to Africa, we denied that we ever had any knowledge.
Yeah.
There are philosophers, Western philosophers, who said we never had any knowledge, that we are not part of history. So, but we are saying no. Before that violent encounter through slave trade and colonialism, we had empires. We built empires.
Right.
We built Oyo Empire.
Yes.
We took care of our health system. We fed ourselves. We're not importing food from anywhere. So we're saying we are going to engage with the community members to say, what are the knowledge systems that existed here? We are mapping those knowledge systems, and then we are documenting them, and then we are using that to advocate for program design that will address unemployment, that will address poverty. Like I said, not just in rural areas, but I mean, not just in urban area, but for the rural areas as well. So to your question, it requires intentionality. We need intentionality, both with the policymakers and the community themselves. That as we are, thinking about addressing this twin problem, the wicked problem of our time, poverty and inequality, let's look back to what we're doing before. And let's see how we can bring back those knowledge systems. Let's see how we can apply them in a sustainable way.
Interesting. Let's take it to Skara Tungwebeze, who was a participant and who was responsible for the participation of several people from across the continent. Skara, I'd like to ask you that, how will you describe the level of participation of people from different countries, and how did you, what kind of outcome are you expecting? What are you expecting to happen next in the African Indigenous Knowledge Research Network, of which you are a member?
So much, our host. It is a good question, and I am happy to be part of this evening talk. All thanks goes to Professor for the organization, and it was too great for the conference that happened. Of course, we were people from the Bata community in the Southwest and Uganda. That's where we stay. And it was so great because some of my members, it was their first time to be part of the conference, and being not educated so much, but it was good that we had translators, and it was so great that my people, they went home with something. And about the indigenous knowledge systems, for us, for the Bata community, it was a very good thing to come to us, because in Uganda, when you come to Uganda, years back, our ancestors lived in the forests. And later, these forests were gazetted into national parks, and meaning that our indigenous knowledge is no longer seen in our communities because we were scattered, we are not together. When you visit Uganda, we are just scattered. And meaning that our knowledge is no longer in us as the youth, and the elders, they are dying. And meaning that this research, the Indigenous Knowledge Research Network, it will also support us in getting back our knowledge systems in line. Because when we talk about the knowledge systems, we talk about the way of worship. Our ancestors used to worship. the way, the storytelling, all those things, they are no longer here. But we have hopes that from the conference, we went home having hopes that our knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems, will be back to us, and we will be understanding what our knowledge was from our ancestral lands, because due to evictions, like us who are young, we don't know anything about the virtual indigenous knowledge. And I have so much hopes that after the conference, even the conferences to come, as the virtual community, we will have got benefits from those research networks.
Excellent point. Thank you so much, Skara Tumwembeze, for your contribution, and Professor Samuel Olontoba, who is also a professor, an extraordinary professor at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at the University of South Africa. Thank you so much for your work. Clearly, it will take an effective partnership between the town and gown on a continental scale to be able to get this going. And I wish you all the best. This is the kind of thinking that I believe has the potential to give us the real economic transformation that will be on our own terms as Africa. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to take this thing all the way through, not only in Nigeria, but across the continent. Thank you so much for coming to Inside Sources, both of you, Dr. Olontoba and Skara.
We have formed the consortium of indigenous knowledge research universities in Africa. This came out of this conference. So like 16 universities, they are members now. Okay. And so that will give us opportunity to introduce courses on indigenous knowledge and entrepreneurship, to bid for grant, international grant to conduct research. So other universities that may be interested in joining, they can reach out to me. Thank you.
How many universities in Nigeria are included in that 16?
We have University of Port Harcourt, we have Delta State University, we have University of Ibadan, and then we have University of Lagos, where my alma mater.
All right. Next time when you are listing the universities, make sure you start with University of Ibadan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof, for coming to Inside Sources. And thank you, Skara, for coming to Inside Sources.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. And there you have it, another edition of Inside Sources. Like we always say, Nigeria will prevail because we will continue to push the major issues of the day, because we believe that if we keep on pushing the issues, if we are not silent, we will get to where this country has to be, the destiny of greatness. My name is Laolu Akonde, and by the grace of God, I'll see you again at the next edition. Thank you for watching.